The lecture hall of the Galactic Concordance Academy stretched wide and tall, filled with students from 40 different species across known space, each sitting in specially designed seats that accommodated their unique. Physiologist Professor Kixandra stood at the front of the room, her forearms gesturing gracefully as she manipulated the holographic display above her head. Her Valorian features composed in an expression of scholarly authority that had commanded respect for 3 decades of teaching today. This advanced xenobiology and toxicology course would cover one of her favorite topics, the lethal flora of primitive worlds. And she had selected what she considered the perfect specimen to begin the semester with appropriate gravitas class. "Your attention, please," Kixandra announced, her translator device rendering her clicking speech into the common tongue. Today we examine a particularly insidious example of evolutionary chemical warfare from the planet designated as Terra, or as its inhabitants call it, Earth. The holographic display shimmered and reformed, showing a small, bright red pod-like fruit with wrinkled skin and a curved tail, rotating slowly in 3-dimensional space while data streams scrolled alongside it in multiple languages. "This," she continued, "is Capsicum chinense, specifically the cultivar known as Carolina Reaper, and it represents one of the most concentrated natural toxins discovered in the surveyed galaxy." A murmur rippled through the assembled students, various species expressing interest through their own unique methods. The glimmerfins produced harmonic chirps, the crystalline telexians shifted colors, and the insectoid creche clicked their mandibles in synchronized patterns. Kixandra expanded the molecular display, showing the chemical structure of capsaicin in glowing blue lines. The active compound, 8-methyl and vanillyl 6-nonamide, commonly called capsaicin, is classified as a Category 4 defensive alkaloid, meaning it poses severe danger to most known biological systems. She tapped another control, and case files appeared. Medical reports from various exploration missions. In 2247, a concordant survey team landed on Earth before first contact protocols were established, and 3 members of the team suffered catastrophic exposure when they consumed local vegetation. The images showed Valorian and Creche scouts in medical pods, their bodies clearly in distress. The capsaicin triggered immediate pain receptor activation across their entire nervous systems, induced severe respiratory distress, caused uncontrollable secretion of protective fluids from mucous membranes, and nearly resulted in fatal shock. A Glimmerfin student in the 3rd row raised her delicate, translucent fin hand, her voice melodic even through the translator. "Professor, why would a plant evolve such a potent defensive mechanism when less extreme measures could deter herbivores?" "An excellent question," Kixandra responded, clearly pleased. Current xenobotanical theory suggests that Earth's ecosystem experienced unusually intense competitive pressure, with predation rates far exceeding galactic norms, forcing defensive adaptations to extreme levels. She brought up comparison charts, showing capsaicin concentrations measured in Scoville heat units, a scale developed by humans themselves to quantify the very toxin that should have been their enemy. The Carolina Reaper measures approximately 2,200,000 SHU, which for perspective is sufficient to cause immediate incapacitation in 87% of tested species. In the back row of the lecture hall, partially obscured by a large Hectarian student whose bulk required 3 seats, Marcus Chen sat quietly reviewing his notes from advanced quantum mathematics on his datapad while eating his lunch. Marcus had packed his usual sandwich that morning: sourdough bread, grilled chicken, pepper jack cheese, lettuce, tomato, and a generous helping of fresh Carolina Reaper slices that he had grown himself in his dormitory's hydroponic garden. He took another bite, chewing thoughtfully while reading about quantum entanglement principles. completely unaware that the holographic display at the front of the room currently showed an exact three-dimensional model of what he was consuming. Professor Kixandra continued her lecture with growing enthusiasm. The compound works by binding to TRPV1 receptors, which are designed to detect harmful heat and physical abrasion, essentially tricking the body into believing it is being burned alive or torn apart. She displayed a simulation of capsaicin molecules attaching to receptor sites. For most species, exposure causes immediate pain signals rated at 9 or 10 on the Universal Pain Index, accompanied by inflammation, potential tissue damage, and systemic stress responses that can prove fatal without immediate medical intervention. A crash student, its mandibles clicking nervously, asked, "Has any species shown resistance to this toxin?" "An interesting point to raise," Kixandra replied. "Some Earth avian species show partial immunity, likely through coevolution, which actually serves the plant's reproductive strategy by allowing birds to spread seeds while deterring mammalian herbivores, who would destroy the seeds with their digestive processes." Marcus finished chewing his bite and took another, this one containing an especially generous slice of pepper, the heat building pleasantly in his mouth as endorphins began their familiar dance through his system. "The humans of Earth have documented this toxin extensively," the professor continued, "and classify it appropriately as a dangerous substance. Yet their agricultural practices puzzle xenobotanists considerably." She brought up images of Earth farming operations. Rather than eradicating these plants as any logical species would, humans maintain them in controlled environments, though presumably for defensive weaponization or pharmaceutical extraction. The records remain unclear on this point. The molecular structure rotated again on the display. What makes capsaicin particularly insidious is its stability and persistence. It does not break down easily, can contaminate surfaces for extended periods, and affects most species' ocular organs with particular severity. Exposure protocols require full hazmat certification. She added seriously, and even trace amounts can cause severe distress. "I cannot emphasize enough that if you ever encounter this compound in fieldwork, you must treat it as a Class 4 biohazard and evacuate immediately." Marcus reached into his lunch container and pulled out a small bag of dried pepper flakes, the kind he liked to add to his sandwich for extra kick. Sprinkling a small amount onto his remaining food, the scent of capsaicin began to diffuse through the air around him. Subtle but present, a smell he associated with good food and satisfaction in front of him. A Glimmerfin student named Lyrie shifted uncomfortably, her sensitive olfactory sensors detecting something unusual in the atmosphere, something chemical and aggressive and completely out of place in an academic setting. She tried to focus on the lecture, but the smell grew stronger, more present, triggering her species' instinctive threat assessment responses. Professor Kixandra was explaining long-term exposure effects when Lyrie finally turned around, her large prismatic eyes trying to locate the source of the disturbing chemical signature. Her gaze fell on Marcus, who had just taken another bite of his sandwich, and for a moment, her brain refused to process what she was seeing. The human student was eating something, chewing casually, and there, clearly visible between the bread, were bright red slices of exactly what was currently rotating in holographic form at the front of the classroom. Lyrie's musical voice cracked into a high-pitched harmonic of pure panic, a sound that cut through the lecture like a blade through water. The sound that emerged from Lyrie's throat was something her species only produced in moments of absolute terror, a frequency that bypassed conscious thought and triggered immediate alarm responses in every Glimmerfin within hearing range. 3 other Glimmerfin students immediately swiveled toward her, their bodies already shifting into defensive postures, fins extending and bioluminescent patterns flashing warning colors across their translucent skin. Death fruit. Lyra shrieked, her translator struggling to keep up with her panic. The human has the death fruit. He's consuming IT. Professor Kissandra's lecture halted mid-sentence, her forearms freezing in their gestures as her brain processed the impossible statement. No student would be foolish enough to bring a Class 4 biohazard into her classroom, much less consume it, but then she saw where Lyra was pointing, and her eyes tracked to the back row, to the human exchange student, to Marcus Chun, who had paused with his sandwich halfway to his mouth, confusion evident on his face. The holographic display still rotated behind her, showing the Carolina Reaper in all its lethal glory, and in Marcus's hand, clearly visible even from this distance, was an exact match. Time seemed to slow as the full implications crashed through Kissandra's mind like a meteor through atmosphere. A human student was eating a substance that would hospitalize or kill most of her class. A toxin so potent that proper handling required hazmat certification. Her training kicked in with the force of decades of emergency protocols. "Nobody move," she commanded, her voice carrying the full authority of her position. "Remain calm. Medical emergency in progress." Her upper right arm was already triggering the emergency beacon on her wrist communicator, while her lower arms grabbed her emergency medical kit, and she began moving toward Marcus with the controlled urgency of a professional facing a crisis. Around the lecture hall, chaos erupted in species-specific ways. The crush students' fight-or-flight instincts triggered hard toward flight, and 6 of them bolted for the exits, their segmented legs carrying them in rapid, skittering movements that echoed off the walls. The Telixians, being silicon-based and generally more resistant to organic toxins, remained in their seats but shifted their crystalline structures to protective configurations, internal lights dimming to conserve energy. The Hectarians, large and slow-moving, simply froze, their massive bulk making rapid evacuation impractical. So they opted for the defensive stillness. The remaining Glimmerfins had formed a cluster near the door, their species' schooling instinct driving them to group together in the face of danger. All of them watching Marcus with expressions of horrified fascination. Marcus, for his part, was completely bewildered. He had been eating his lunch, minding his own business, trying to understand quantum entanglement, and suddenly the entire class was acting like he had pulled out a live grenade. He said eloquently, his sandwich still in hand. "Is something wrong?" "Don't swallow," Kisandra shouted as she ran down the aisle, her medical kit now open and various emergency supplies floating in the low-gravity field she had activated around her hands. "Keep it in your mouth. Don't let it reach your digestive system. Medical is on the way." Marcus blinked at her, then at his sandwich, then at the holographic display that still showed the Carolina Reaper, and the connection finally formed in his mind. He thought, "Oh no, Professor. Wait," he tried to say, but she was already there, a scanner in one hand and what looked like some kind of extraction device in another. "How long ago did you consume it?" she demanded, her professional demeanor barely containing her panic. "How much? Are you experiencing pain? Difficulty breathing? Is your vision blurring?" The medical team burst through the door at that moment. 4 Valorians in full hazmat suits carrying emergency response equipment, moving with the practiced efficiency of professionals who had trained for every possible crisis except. Marcus thought wryly, probably not this one. "Bioscan reading." The lead medic called out, raising a device toward Marcus that hummed with active scanning frequencies. "Professor." "Really, I'm fine." Marcus attempted again, but the scanner was already working, beams of light washing over him in diagnostic patterns. The medic's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: concern, confusion, deeper confusion, and then outright bafflement. "Readings are inconsistent," the medic announced. "Elevated heart rate, elevated endorphin production, increased blood flow to extremities. But no signs of distress, no inflammation markers, no pain response activation. That's impossible, Kixandra said flatly. Scan again. Your equipment must be malfunctioning. The medic complied, running the scanner over Marcus a second time, then a third. Each pass producing the same bewildering results. Marcus, deciding that words were clearly not working, made a decision that he would later reflect might not have been his wisest, but which certainly got the point across effectively. He raised his sandwich, made eye contact with Professor Kixandra, and took another deliberate bite. Chewing slowly and thoroughly, the lecture hall fell into a silence, so complete that the ambient hum of the building's life support systems became audible. Every student, every medic, every faculty member who had gathered at the door to witness the emergency simply stared. Marcus swallowed, the sound somehow audible in the absolute quiet, and then said in the most casual tone he could manage, "It's just lunch. I eat these pretty regularly." One of the Glimmerfin students fainted, her body going limp as her brain simply refused to process the contradiction between what she knew should be happening and what was actually occurring. The lead medic ran another scan, then looked at his equipment as if betrayed by a trusted friend. "Professor," he said slowly, "the human is telling the truth, physiologically. He is experiencing what appears to be recreational enjoyment of the capsaicin compound." "That's not possible," Kixandra repeated. But her scientific mind was already racing ahead, already adjusting to new data, already reformulating hypotheses. "Humans have different capsaicin receptors," Marcus explained, trying to be helpful despite the surreal nature of the situation. "We can taste it, and it does trigger pain responses. But it's not dangerous to us. Actually, we kind of like it." "You like it?" Lyrie asked from her safe position near the door, her voice hitting notes of disbelief that transcended her species' normal musical range. "You experience pain, and you like it?" Marcus considered how to explain the concept of enjoying spicy food to species for whom capsaicin was essentially nerve gas. "It's complicated," he said finally. "The pain triggers endorphin release, which feels good. Plus, it makes food taste more interesting." Professor Kixandra's forearms had gone limp at her sides, a medical kid forgotten, her entire worldview undergoing rapid reconstruction. "You cultivate these plants," she said slowly. Not quite a question, not quite a statement. Not for weapons or medicine, but for food flavoring. "Well, yeah," Marcus confirmed. "I mean, some people use pepper spray for self-defense, but mostly we just eat them. There's a whole scale and everything, the Scoville scale. It measures how spicy peppers are. The scale in my lecture," Kixandra said faintly, "the one I presented as a toxicity measurement, is actually a food rating system." Marcus finished. "Yeah." The silence stretched again, broken only by one of the medics quietly updating their medical databases with a note that would require extensive peer review before anyone believed it. "I have so many questions," Professor Kixandra said finally, her scientific curiosity beginning to override her shock. "So very many questions." Marcus, sensing that his lunch break had just become significantly more complicated, set down his sandwich and prepared for what was clearly going to be a very long afternoon behind him. Another student quietly evacuated, unable to reconcile the existence of a species that consumed Category 4 biohazards for pleasure. Professor Kixandra stood in the center of her lecture hall, watching as the emergency medical team reluctantly packed away their equipment, their body language suggesting profound professional confusion at responding to an emergency that turned out to be a student eating lunch. She had sent most of the class home early, keeping only those students who seemed more curious than terrified, which amounted to about 15 individuals from various species. all seated significantly farther from Marcus than they had been originally. Marcus himself sat on the demonstration table at the front of the room, his sandwich now the subject of more scientific scrutiny than some planetary surveys received, while Professor Kixandra paced back and forth, her forearms gesturing as her mind worked through the implications. "Explain it again," she said. Not for the first time, from the beginning. The entire concept. Marcus took a breath, trying to organize his thoughts into something that would make sense to species that experienced capsaicin as lethal poison. Okay, so humans have TRPV1 receptors just like most species. And capsaicin does bind to them and trigger pain responses. But it doesn't harm us, he continued. It's just a sensation, like touching something hot but without actual tissue damage. And when we experience that sensation, our brains release endorphins, which are natural chemicals that make us feel good. A Talaxian student, her crystalline form refracting the room's light into rainbow patterns, spoke up in her chiming voice. "So you experience pain, genuine neurological pain responses, and your brain rewards you for it?" "Basically, yeah," Marcus confirmed. "It's a weird quirk of our biology. The same receptors that warn us about actual heat also respond to capsaicin. But since there's no real damage, it's safe pain." "Safe pain," Kixandra repeated, testing the words as if they belonged to an alien language. "Which in a sense they did. You have categorized pain into safe and unsafe varieties. I mean, we don't usually think about it that way," Marcus said. "But yeah, I guess we have. There's painful things that hurt us, and painful things that just feel intense." He gestured to his sandwich. "This is intense, definitely. My mouth feels like it's on fire. I'm sweating a little. My heart rate is up, but I know from experience that it will pass, and I'll be fine. And in the meantime, the endorphins feel nice, and the flavor is really good." One of the remaining Glimmerfin students, braver than her departed classmates, asked in a trembling melodic voice, "But why would you want to feel like you're on fire? Why not just eat food that doesn't hurt?" Marcus considered this. Honestly, that's a really good question, and humans debate it sometimes. But I think it comes down to the fact that we like intense experiences. We seek out things that push our limits in safe ways. We ride roller coasters that simulate falling to our deaths. He continued, warming to his subject. We watch scary movies that trigger fear responses. We play competitive sports that exhaust us. We seem to enjoy controlled doses of things that would be terrible if they were uncontrolled. Professor Kixandra had stopped pacing and was now recording everything Marcus said on multiple devices. "This is remarkable," she murmured. "Absolutely remarkable. Do all humans consume capsaicin?" "Not all," Marcus admitted. "Tolerance varies a lot between individuals. Some people can't handle any heat at all. Some people chase the hottest peppers they can find. I'm somewhere in the middle." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small insulated container. "Actually, I brought my collection. I was going to snack on these during study sessions this week." Opening the container revealed an array of peppers in various colors and sizes. From small green jalapagos to orange habaneros to chocolate-colored ghost peppers. And crowning the collection, several fresh Carolina Reapers. The students who had remained leaned forward with morbid fascination, staring at what their biology told them was a collection of chemical weapons, casually stored in a lunch container. "These are all different varieties," Marcus explained. "They have different heat levels and different flavors. This is a jalapeno. It's pretty mild, maybe 5,000 Scoville units. I use these for basic cooking." He pointed to each pepper in turn. "Habaneros, around 300,000 units, really fruity flavor under the heat. Ghost peppers, over 1,000,000 units. Those are intense, and Carolina Reapers, the ones you were lecturing about, around 2,200,000 units. And you consume all of these?" Kixandra asked. "Voluntarily?" "Well, not all at once," Marcus said with a laugh. That would be excessive even for me, but yeah. I use different peppers for different things. Cooking, sauces, sometimes just eating them fresh. A hectarian student, his massive bulk shifting with what might have been incredulity, spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. On my world, we have a saying, pain teaches truth, meaning suffering instructs us to avoid its source. Humans appear to have inverted this wisdom entirely. That's actually pretty accurate, Marcus agreed. We definitely have a weird relationship with pain. We avoid genuinely harmful pain, obviously, but we seek out the kind we can control. Professor Kixandra was already planning, her scientific mind racing ahead. Would you be willing to participate in a demonstration? She asked. Under proper safety protocols, naturally, for the students and faculty who can witness without distress. Marcus shrugged. Sure, I don't mind. What did you have in mind? A controlled presentation, Kixandra said, her enthusiasm building. You could explain the cultural context, demonstrate consumption, perhaps allow interested parties to attempt extremely diluted samples under medical supervision. Diluted samples? Marcus asked, slightly confused. You mean like hot sauce mixed with other ingredients? I mean capsaicin diluted to potentially survivable levels for non-human biology. Kixandra clarified. Though I suspect even trace amounts will prove extremely challenging for most species. She turned to address the remaining students. This is an unprecedented opportunity for xenobiological study. We have before us a species that has turned a lethal toxin into a recreational substance. The implications for our understanding of human biology and psychology are profound. Lyrie, who had crept back into the room during the explanation, asked hesitantly, Could you explain the appeal one more time? I'm trying to understand, but my brain keeps insisting that what you're doing should kill you. Marcus thought about it, trying to find words that would bridge the gap between human experience and alien perspective. Imagine something that feels dangerous but isn't, he said slowly. Something that makes your body react with alarm, but you know you're actually safe. It's exciting. It makes you feel alive, and afterward, you feel accomplished for handling it. Plus, he added with a grin, it really does make food taste amazing. There's something about the heat that brings out other flavors, makes everything more vivid and intense. He picked up his sandwich again. This isn't just pain, it's an experience. The crunch of the bread, the savory chicken, the creamy cheese, and then the peppers that tie it all together with fire and flavor. It's a whole journey in your mouth. The Talixian student's lights flickered in a pattern that suggested deep thought. So it is a form of entertainment, like your roller coasters or scary movies, but for your digestive system, huh? Marcus said. Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good way to put it. Culinary thrill-seeking Professor Kixandra was already making notes for what would undoubtedly become a landmark paper in xenobiology. This changes everything we thought we knew about human dietary preferences and pain tolerance, she said. The literature will need extensive revision. She looked at Marcus with something approaching awe. You've just appended decades of established xenobiological theory by eating lunch. Marcus, who had simply wanted to enjoy his sandwich and study quantum mechanics, found himself at the center of an academic revolution, and he wasn't entirely sure how he felt about that. The demonstration took place 3 days later in the Academy's primary auditorium, a space normally reserved for major presentations and visiting dignitaries, now repurposed for what Professor Kixandra had titled A Xenobiological Study of Human Capsaicin Tolerance and Recreational Consumption. Word had spread through the Academy with the speed of wildfire, and the auditorium was packed beyond capacity. Students and faculty from every department crowding in to witness what many considered either groundbreaking science or elaborate suicide medical teams stood by at every exit. Hazmat protocols were in place, and insurance administrators had required everyone in attendance to sign waivers acknowledging The potential dangers of exposure. To Class 4 biohazards, Marcus sat on the stage behind a table that held his pepper collection, various hot sauces he had acquired from Earth imports, and a variety of foods to demonstrate different applications of capsaicin in human cuisine. He felt somewhat like a zoo exhibit. But Professor Kixandra had been so enthusiastic, and the academic council had approved research credits. And honestly, it was kind of funny watching aliens treat his lunch like hazardous materials. Professor Kixandra stood at the podium, addressing the crowd. Today, we will observe direct human interaction with capsaicin compounds at concentrations that would prove lethal or severely harmful to most species present. I cannot stress enough that what you are about to witness is the result of unique human biology and should under no circumstances be attempted by non-humans without extensive medical oversight. She gestured to Marcus. Our volunteer, Marcus Chun, has graciously agreed to demonstrate various levels of capsaicin consumption while explaining the cultural and culinary context of this uniquely human practice. Marcus stood and waved awkwardly to the crowd, receiving a mixture of applause, nervous chittering, and what might have been prayers from some of the more religious species. "Hi, everyone," he began, his voice amplified by the room's speakers. "So I'm going to show you how humans eat spicy food, and I'll try to explain why we do it. Which honestly, I'm not sure I fully understand myself. But here we go." He picked up a jalapeno, holding it up for the cameras that were recording every moment for academic archives. This is a jalapeno pepper. It's one of the milder peppers humans eat regularly. About 5,000 Scoville heat units. Several students gasped. Apparently, 5,000 Shu was still well within lethal range for many species. Marcus bit into the jalapeno, chewing thoughtfully. The heat is gentle. You feel it build in your mouth. A little tingle on the tongue and lips. It's actually really pleasant. Adds a nice kick to food without overwhelming other flavors. He swallowed and continued. Humans use these in lots of dishes. Pizzas, sandwiches, nachos, salads. We pickle them, stuff them with cheese, deep fry them. They're super versatile. A creche professor in the third row raised a limb. You said the heat builds. Does that mean the pain intensifies over time? Yeah, Marcus confirmed. Capsaicin isn't instant. It takes a few seconds to really hit. Then it peaks. Then it gradually fades. The whole experience might last 5 to 10 minutes depending on how much you ate. He reached for the next pepper. A bright orange habanero. Now this is where we start getting into what most humans would consider actually spicy. Habaneros run around 300,000 SHU. They have a really nice fruity flavor under the heat. The medical team tensed visibly as Marcus bit into the habanero. Their scanners already tracking his vital signs. Marcus chewed, and the crowd watched his face intently. Looking for signs of distress, his eyes did water slightly, and a light sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead. But he was smiling. Okay, yeah, he said after swallowing. That's got some kick. You can feel it in your sinuses. Your mouth feels like it's glowing. Heart rate picks up a bit. And yeah, there's the endorphin rush. He took a sip of milk from a glass on the table. Fun fact, water doesn't help with capsaicin because it's not water-soluble. Milk works better because the casein protein binds to the capsaicin and washes it away. Professor Kixandra added. This demonstrates the human capacity to not only endure capsaicin exposure, but to develop strategies for managing its effects, suggesting long-term cultural interaction with these compounds. A Glenarvan student, speaking through her translator with obvious nervousness, asked, "Why would you do this to yourself when you clearly have physical reactions to it?" Marcus considered the question while his mouth continued to burn pleasantly. Because it feels good in a weird way. The rush is real. Plus food without some spice feels boring to me now. I've built up a tolerance. So I need hotter peppers to get the same effect. Tolerance. Kixandra repeated. Meaning repeated exposure has altered your physiological response. Exactly, Marcus agreed. When I first started eating spicy food, Galapagos were intense. Now they're mild. I've trained my receptors to handle more. He picked up a dried ghost pepper, dark red and wrinkled. This is where we get into extreme territory, even for humans. Ghost peppers or Butjalokia, over 1 million shu. Not everyone can handle these. The auditorium fell silent as Marcus bit off a piece of the dried pepper. And for a few seconds, nothing happened. Then his face reddened. Sweat broke out across his forehead, and he exhaled sharply through his mouth. Okay, he said, his voice slightly strained. Okay, that's intense. Whole mouth is on fire. Tongue feels swollen even though it isn't. Breathing is interesting. Definitely got my attention. The medical scanners showed his heart rate elevated. Endorphin levels spiking, blood flow increased. But no distress markers, no danger signs. Just a body responding to perceived threat while knowing it was safe. This is the level where it stops being casual and starts being a challenge, Marcus explained between careful breaths. Some humans love this intensity. We have competitions to see who can eat the hottest peppers. It's a whole subculture, a Hectarian administrator. His deep voice resonant with disbelief, stated, "You compete to cause yourselves pain. We compete at lots of painful things," Marcus pointed out. Marathons hurt, boxing hurts. This is just a different flavor of voluntary suffering. The endorphins were definitely flowing now. Marcus could feel the familiar euphoria settling in, the sense of accomplishment from handling the heat. "And this is why we do it," he said. "Right now, I feel amazing. My brain is rewarding me for surviving what it thinks is a threat." Professor Kixandra was taking extensive notes. The psychological component is as significant as the physiological. Humans have created a cultural framework that transforms defensive plant compounds into recreational substances for the next hour. Marcus demonstrated various applications: hot sauce on eggs, spiced rice, pepper-infused chocolate. Each one met with varying degrees of horror and fascination from the audience when he offered to let volunteers try extremely diluted samples. Under medical supervision and with full emergency protocols in place, 3 brave souls stepped forward. A Talixian who claimed silicon-based biology might offer protection. A creche scientist motivated by pure curiosity, and surprisingly, Leary the Glimmerfin, who said her fear was less important than her desire to understand. The Talixian went first. A single drop of sauce diluted 1,000 to 1 in a neutral base. She consumed it, paused, and her crystalline structure flickered rapidly. "Interesting," she chimed. "I perceive a stimulation of my sensory matrix, uncomfortable but not unbearable. I rate this experience as educational, but not to be repeated." The creche scientist managed 2 drops before his carapace started, secreting emergency coolant fluids, and the medical team intervened. He survived, but declared humans to be biologically insane. In his official statement, Lyrie approached the diluted sample with visible trepidation. Her fins trembling, she took the smallest possible amount, barely a fraction of a drop, and immediately her entire body flashed brilliant warning colors. The medical team rushed forward, but Lyrie waved them off with a shaking limb. "I'm alive," she sang, her voice hitting notes of surprise. "It's terrible. It's like being attacked by angry stars. But I'm alive and I understand now." She looked at Marcus with new respect. "You do this for fun." "Humans are absolutely terrifying, and I mean that as a compliment," Marcus grinned. Took a bite of his Carolina Reaper, the hottest pepper on the table, and the entire auditorium watched in awed silence as he chewed, swallowed, and gave a thumbs up while sweat poured down his face. Professor Kixandra began drafting her paper that evening. It would be titled Recreational Toxin Consumption in Homo Sapiens, a Paradigm. shift in xenobiological understanding, and it would win 3 major academic awards, but more importantly, it would fundamentally change how the galaxy viewed humanity. As the species that looked at chemical warfare from plants and said, "Let's put that on our food." The recording of Marcus Chun eating a Carolina Reaper went viral across the galactic network within hours of the demonstration, reaching view counts that typically only belong to major political events or natural disaster. Students from universities across 40 systems contacted Academy requesting interviews with Marcus. Xenobiology departments scrambled to revise their entire curriculum on human biology, and the Concordance Medical Authority issued an urgent update to all hospitals warning that humans might voluntarily consume substances previously classified as medical emergencies. Marcus woke up 4 days after the demonstration to find himself inadvertently famous. His personal communicator was flooded with messages, news services wanted statements, and someone had created a fan community dedicated to humans eating dangerous things that already had 3 million members. He sat in the Academy cafeteria, trying to enjoy breakfast, while students from a dozen species watched him from nearby tables, whispering and pointing whenever he added hot sauce to his eggs. "Is it always going to be like this?" he asked Lyrie, who had become something of a friend after the demonstration, bonding over their shared experience of that day. Albeit from very different perspectives, Lyrie's fins rippled in what Marcus had learned was amusement. "You showed the entire galaxy that humans casually consume what we consider deadly poison," she sang melodically. "You are either going to be famous for a very long time, or until the next human does something equally inexplicable." "That's what worries me," Marcus muttered. "We probably do equally weird stuff all the time. We just don't notice because it's normal to us." A creche student passing by their table paused and worked up courage to speak. "Excuse me, Marcus Chen, is it true that humans also voluntarily consume ethanol, which is a solvent and cellular toxin?" Marcus blinked. You mean alcohol?" "Yeah, lots of humans drink." The creche student's mandibles clicked in what might have been existential distress. "But ethanol causes neural inhibition and organ damage." "Well, yeah, if you have too much," Marcus agreed. "But in moderation it's fine, plus it makes you feel relaxed and social." The student backed away slowly, muttering something about updating his thesis on human survival instincts. Or rather, the complete lack thereof. Lyrie's bioluminescence flickered with laughter. "You just made it worse." Professor Kixandra arrived at their table, carrying a datapad and wearing the expression of someone who had not slept in several days, but was too excited to care. "Marcus, excellent. I need your input on something." She set the datapad down, showing a long list of substances. "I've been compiling a comprehensive database of compounds that humans consume recreationally despite their toxicity to other species. I need you to verify my research." Marcus scanned the list. "Caffeine, theobromine, capsaicin, ethanol, nicotine, allyl isothiocyanate from wasabi and horseradish, piperine from black pepper." And the list continued for several pages. "This is accurate?" Kixandra asked. "Humans voluntarily consume all of these?" "I mean, yeah, though some more than others," Marcus confirmed. "Caffeine is huge. Almost everyone drinks coffee or tea. Chocolate has theobromine. Lots of people drink alcohol. Some smoke, though that's less common now. And all those spices are in regular cooking." Kixandra made notes with 3 hands while gesturing emphatically with the 4th. "This is unprecedented. Humans have identified numerous plant defense compounds, and instead of avoiding them, you've incorporated them into your cultural practices." "I never really thought about it that way," Marcus admitted. "We just call it food and drinks. Food and drinks that would hospitalize most of the galaxy," Lyrie added helpfully. "I looked up caffeine after the capsaicin demonstration. A single human coffee would put me in medical care for a week. Marcus looked at his coffee with new appreciation. Huh. Wild. Over the following weeks, Professor Kixandra completely restructured her advanced xenobiology course, adding an entire section titled Human Exception Cases in Toxicology. That quickly became the most popular module in the department. She brought in samples of coffee, tea, chocolate, and various spices, all handled with the same hazmat protocols previously reserved for actual hazardous materials. Because to most species, that's exactly what they were. Students learned about human evolutionary history, how competition with other species had driven humans to exploit food sources others couldn't access, how cultural practices had developed around substances that provided advantages despite risks. The holographic displays now showed coffee beans alongside warnings that the caffeine concentration in standard human beverages would cause cardiac arrest in 70% of known species. Marcus found himself recruited as a teaching assistant, his job mostly consisting of existing as proof that humans really did consume these things regularly and survive. He also started a small business, importing earth foods to the academy with extensive labeling systems, each product marked with species-specific danger ratings and handling instructions. His shop, creatively named Danger Foods, became wildly popular, not for consumption by non-humans, but as educational materials, conversation pieces, and extremely exotic gifts. A Valorian professor bought a bottle of hot sauce to keep on her desk as a reminder that the universe was stranger than any textbook suggested. A Talixian student purchased chocolate as a safe, toxic substance to study since her crystalline biology was less reactive than organic systems. And a Hectarian administrator ordered coffee beans for a museum of inexplicable human behaviors. But Marcus also provided detailed guides for the few species that could potentially tolerate extremely diluted versions of these substances. And he worked with medical researchers to understand why humans were so different in this regard. The answer, it turned out, was complicated. Humans were persistence hunters who evolved to outlast prey through endurance. Their ability to tolerate various compounds was partly genetic luck, partly evolutionary pressure, and partly cultural adaptation. Humans had learned to process and prepare foods in ways that reduced toxicity while maintaining benefits. They had developed cultural knowledge about what was safe and what wasn't, and they had high enough genetic diversity that some individuals could handle almost anything while others needed to be more careful. 6 months after the initial incident, Marcus sat in the updated lecture hall watching Professor Kixandra teach a new generation of students about human biology. The holographic displays now showed not just capsaicin, but the full range of human dietary peculiarities. The key to understanding humans, Kixandra explained to her class, is recognizing that they are an adaptive species that turns obstacles into opportunities. Where other species see poison, humans often see potential. She gestured to Marcus, sitting in his usual back row seat, eating his usual lunch. They are also remarkably casual about their own exceptional nature. Marcus Chen changed our entire understanding of toxicology by eating a sandwich, and his response was essentially, "Oh, this is weird to you?" The class laughed, a mixture of sounds from various species, all of them more comfortable now with the concept of human strangeness. A new human student had enrolled that semester, Sarah Martinez, and she sat 2 rows ahead of Marcus, completely unaware that she was about to cause the second great human food incident. Marcus saw it happening in slow motion. Sarah pulled out her morning beverage, a large coffee with extra shots of espresso, the kind of high-octane caffeine delivery system that humans use to jumpstart their brains. Professor Kixandra was mid-sentence when she noticed the cup. When she saw the human student casually drinking what her updated curriculum clearly labeled as a cardiac toxin, A lecture faltered. Marcus watched as comprehension dawned across the room, as students who had learned about caffeine in theory suddenly saw it being consumed in practice, as the gap between academic knowledge and visceral reality reasserted itself. "Oh no," Lyra sang quietly from her seat, her fins already starting to ripple with nervousness. "It's happening again." Professor Kixandra recovered her composure with admirable speed, years of teaching experience allowing her to adapt on the fly. "Class," she said smoothly, "you are now witnessing a human consuming caffeine in concentrations that would prove lethal to approximately 70% of species present. Please observe that the human shows no signs of distress." Sarah, realizing she had just become an impromptu teaching demonstration, waved awkwardly with her coffee cup. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. And apparently, I'm today's visual aid." Marcus grinned and raised his own coffee in salute. Sarah noticed and her eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh hey, you're the pepper guy. I saw your video. That was awesome." "Thanks," Marcus called back. "Welcome to Xenobiology, where humans are the weird ones." Professor Kixandra seized the opportunity. "Sarah, if you're willing, would you mind explaining to the class why humans consume caffeine despite its psychoactive properties?" Sarah shrugged. "Makes us alert, helps us focus, tastes good. Plus, if we don't have it in the morning, we get headaches and turn into grumpy monsters." A Glimmerfin student raised a fin. "You experience withdrawal symptoms and continue consuming the substance anyway." "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad," Sarah admitted. "But yeah, basically, humans have a complicated relationship with lots of substances,